the start of my presentation, which is called Baby Steps. So today's session is focused and designed around a technique that I've been newly introduced to called object-based learning. And for me, object-based learning is kind of around three main areas. So it's around creative thinking, so forcing us to consider theories and concepts, but with a creative mindset, and actually triggering parts of our brain and parts of our natural way of thinking and interpretation that might normally be more subdued and used less. It's playful, and that's always a good thing. It's good to have fun. It's good to enjoy something. It's good to have new experiences. And I think that's a big part of what object-based learning is. And finally, and most powerfully for me, there's something around an emotional connection as well. So I'm going to introduce you to my object. I am going to introduce you to it using a few different methods, but the word emotion is actually really important for the whole of this presentation, and it'll come clear as to why. So there's a wee bit more detail there about the different references I've used and the thoughts I had, but I'm very conscious of not packing slides full of text. So if you'd like to read this, I've got this whole presentation available as a PDF, which I'll send out following the session. But I'm experimenting with trying the simplicity with PowerPoint. I'm not ready to move away from it, Hunter, but I'm very much experimenting with newness of it. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my object. So this will be in video form and with accompanying sound. Okay, so I'd like to use a piece of software called Padlet. You may or may not have used it before. It's a really nice, simple web-based service that allows us to capture thoughts and feelings. And the great thing is that we don't lose it later. So I can download all of these Padlets we're going to create together and share them with them after the session, because it's quite good sometimes to go back and reflect. So if you have a mobile device, that would be great to hand. If you don't have one to hand, I'll give you a minute. But all I'd like you to do is to hold your mobile device up to the QR code on screen, and that will immediately connect you to a Padlet. So I'll just give you a minute. If you can just pop in the chat, and my assistant, who is also called Kirsty, will check the chat boxes. If you can just give me a note to say you're in, that would be great. Thanks, Isabella. Thanks, Steph. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Alex. Claire, Hunter, are you okay? Are you having any, if you're having any difficulties, let me know. Or if you'd rather experience the session a different way, then that's okay too. All good. Excellent. Okay. Hunter, I'm going to note silence here and just move through. Okay. So I'm going to take you to the Padlet now on our screen together. And what I'd like you to do, so let's go to this one, is I'd like you to represent your initial emotions on meeting this object with a GIF. So whatever that is for you. And the reason I'm asking you to use a GIF is sometimes there's just not words, or we can get distracted with selection of the right words. And thank you to the person that's already uploaded that beautiful GIF. And it's so nice to see. I can see that you're all logged in, which is brilliant. So just give you a minute to upload.
Hi, Kirsty.
Hello.
Bit of a grandma question. How do you find a GIF?
Right, great question actually. So Steph, you can see in the bottom right hand corner there's a pink circle with a white cross in it. So if you press on that, I'll do it at the same time so I can kind of follow along. And then if you go to search this little, so it's the image search one, which is the right of the two orange symbols.
Yeah.
If you click on that, and it allows you to select the GIF tab to search for a GIF.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sorry, that's I should have maybe mapped you that way, but anyone else having difficulties, or is that all cool? If you are, pop your mics on and ask me. Hunter, I've just seen your message. Well done. I can give you the QR code now, Rachel, but what I'll also do is I'll just share the link to the Padlet in the chat, so we can do that too, which I will go back and do now. So that's it in the chat, Rachel, and you can use it directly from there. Thank you. These are amazing nostalgia. I love the representation nostalgia. So cool. Oh, guys, these are great. Love this. But the four girls, yeah, nostalgia again with the four girls. I had one of those bikes with the baskets, but I never had the fringe kind of thing. I can't think of the word now, but I always wanted one for my handlebars, or for each handlebar. That little person's very good at walking indeed. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay. Just let a few more of these start to come up. Gorgeous. Oh, these are so good. So good. Thank you very much for this. This is brilliant. As I said, if you want to continue creating and adding any thoughts to that, then this Padlet is completely open, and I'll share all the links at the end. But for reasons of time and balance, I'm going to move on a little bit and back to the presentation. Okay, so thank you for that. So bearing that in mind and how you felt when you first met the object through the video, and I want to give you a second meeting to our object. So this is me placing the object within context. So you can see the object on the right hand side of the screen, around the middle. And I'm just going to give you all a moment to have a look at that and kind of have a few thoughts. I don't want to give you any structure at the moment, just a few moments to think. Now this time, I do actually have another QR code, but just to see how this might look interestingly and to let you ponder that image a little bit. If you bear with me a second till I come back onto the session. I am going to pop the link to the next Padlet in the chat. And I'm going to keep the image on the screen just now. And I'll look at the Padlet in a different way. Now, if you go into the next again Padlet, you'll see there are 3 columns where I'm asking you questions about your next interaction with that object. I'll give you a moment just to have a look. So this is capturing your emotional response. So the first emotional response is your physical response to this object. Did you have any physical responses? Did you not? How did that feel? And this time I'd like you to use words as opposed to GIFs. So you can think and detail out and be descriptive. The second part is how can you relate to this object, and if so, how? Or maybe you can't relate to it, in which case I want you to share that as well. And thirdly, and I think what's really important in a digital space is to think about how would your experience with this object and your interactions and meeting and engaging with this object differ if you were meeting this object in real life. Oh, what a nice comment. These are great, guys. I love the to catch the ball comment. Snacks as a connection. Yeah, great. These are great. Interesting about what you're saying. I just want to take a moment to reflect on some of the things you're writing here. So when the object is put in context, there's other things we're noticing when we come in touch with that object. So you might notice from the hand and the two legs, there's a person here. There's a pair of jeans. There's indeed a bowl with some snacks. There are poppy seed and parsnip biscuits, if anyone's interested. Complete favourite in our household. So you will have interactions and engagement with the connecting objects to that object when you place it within a context. And that's what's, for me, what is quite interesting about object-based learning, is that it can be very representative of the noise that we experience in our everyday lives, the noise we experience in a marketing context in terms of constantly being sold to, whether that's through social media or adverts or just interactions with kind of the objects we face as we go about living our day. So I thought that was quite interesting. And in terms of experiencing it in real life, yeah, it might not just be the feet that you're experiencing, you know, with the person wearing the object be part of that experience. I'd love to think so. Yes. So the colour, that was really purposeful. So thank you, Steph, for noticing that. It's about making it contemporary and less nostalgic. Yes, absolutely. And being aware of the texture of the object more before, so it feels very textural. Yeah, so there's that haptic interaction. Yeah, lovely. Warmth of imagery. Yeah, these are great, guys. These are super. And yeah, it's interesting to just, I think, sometimes take a moment to stop and think. And certainly for me, one thing I love about this new discovery of objects-based learning is slowing down. I'm a very fast person, like to live everything at 100 miles an hour, constantly working on lots of things at once. And having this time to stop and think and engage and interact with an object, inspired by working with my new arts colleagues, has been, for want of a better word, very therapeutic. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the second part of our presentation. So we've covered this part. Okay, so I want to tell you a wee bit about these objects and why I chose them. So what do they symbolise for me? So in case you hadn't guessed, and some of you may or may not know, but I have a little boy called Joshua. He's 2.5 years old. He's hilarious. He has white blonde hair. He's very cheeky, and he speaks with a pseudo English Scottish accent. And these are his first shoes. So they symbolise a lot of really interesting things for me in terms of both the learning experience, but also connecting it to my marketing practice. So firstly, they supported him to walk. They were his first shoes, but they didn't do it for him. So we didn't put them on and magically be able to walk. Those were there to support him become as good a walker as he was capable to be, and in his own time. We've never pushed him through any stage of his life. I love the fact that they represented support. They represent, probably for all of us at one point in our life, and I know I'm making a bit of an assumption here, but one of the first major learning experiences in our life in terms of mobilization and having, you know, not just our feet touching the ground, but having something else to help us either, you know, move in a different way, whether that be walking, whether that be rocking, whether that be just standing, whether that do, you know, all sorts of different things. It's a major learning experience. They're incredibly nostalgic Obviously, they're my son's first shoes. They're wrapped, kept in the box, and within a box, within a memory box that I have of all his little things that I'll probably keep for a very long time. But also they were nostalgic because they're Spanish, and for me, the Spanish shoemakers are the best in the world when it comes to children's shoes. I used to buy and design children's collection, and spent a lot of time in Spain doing the shoe collections. But also they were bought from my godmother's shoe shop up in Scotland. So we flew up to buy his first shoes, and I was quite happy to keep him in just socks and bare feet until we were able to make that trip. And finally, memories of Joshua, but also memories of my own childhood and my buying life, and all sorts of other things are associated with that one single object for me as this one single person. So I want to now connect the dots and kind of leap into the second half of my session. Thank you, Rachel, for giving me the reminder in 5 minutes, because this will neatly bring us into a point. One of the most powerful parts of marketing is using emotion to drive meaning behind brand building and positioning objects for purchase in consumers' lives. So in terms of marketing power promotion, O'Shaughnessy and Shaughnessy are two of the really major co-authors of a key text in this area, and they talk about the emotional reactions around buying interest, guiding choice, and intensifying motivation, just driven by how we feel about something emotionally. And effective marketing will stimulate the consumer into receiving a memorable or a connective experience. And that was my demonstration in introducing us to the object this morning, or sorry, within this session this afternoon. I want to show you this film. And actually this inspired my selection for my object. I'm conscious of time, and therefore I'm not going to go back into another Padlet, but I'd love to hear your voices as well. Can you just tell me how that made you feel in a single word? If you wouldn't mind putting your mics on and just sharing with me how that video made you feel.
I think it would be hope for me.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I found it a bit stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Steph.
To me, it's the focus on consumerism.
Interesting. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you. Any other thoughts? interestingly, when I first watched this, I was really upset by it, because it was triggering for something that had happened in my own life. And actually, on that point, I probably should have said something before showing the video. So if I didn't and that had any effect, apologise for that. But what it did do was make me understand about the depths of emotion that can be instilled from filmmaking in an advertising context, because you have an initial emotion reaction, and then there's a secondary reaction whether or not you feel an affiliation with the brand, or you actually feel angered by it being in a consumerist context. I've then, as a result, wanted to introduce you to this Starbucks ad, which won a diversity award back in 2019, which was 3 years ago now, and I wonder how we would feel if this was seen in a modern context.
Gemma Miller.
Gemma Miller, please come to room 4.
Hello.
Hello, am I talking to Gemma?
Hey, Dad. Hey. Carol, you remember my Gemma? And what's your name?
It's James.
James?
So I'd like to wrap up here for a minute. Interestingly, what do you think Starbucks' intention was with the use of that advert? What do you think they were trying to do? What do we feel that was their intended output from the creation of that advert?
Maybe like a sense of individuality, like
Individuality.
valuing individuals.
Yep. So it was acknowledgement. That's absolutely. I'll come back to that. Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Maybe acceptance, like this is a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of going hand in hand in terms of that acceptance of those individual feelings, that individual moment. Alex, did you have something you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I actually found, I don't know what it was, but I found it quite, I think maybe it is because it's Starbucks. I found that it's almost like trying to capitalize on a moment, or like an important, very important like social moment. And I found that actually much more so than the Adidas one, I found it actually kind of really, really grated me almost, because it felt very, it felt a bit contrived, and it felt like it was really just trying to capitalize on, you know, on the work of others, like if that makes sense. And the reason for me, I know the Adidas commercial, and for me the reason that I kind of said hope is as well for that is because it wasn't a commercial for Adidas. It was a student filmmaker. I think his name was Eugene Meher, German, 25, 26-year-old filmmaker. And I remember being that kind of age. And so for me, that the Adidas commercial is so much more than just the commercial. It's the context of like a young filmmaker trying to make something to break into the world as well. And I know that I think Adidas actually turned the commercial down when it was sent to them. But for Starbucks, for me, it just felt very, I think it felt like it was trying to be genuine, but in a way that I find like so many brands try and capitalize on these moments. And I just feel like, it just made me feel uncomfortable, I think.
And I think that's one of the most important and special parts of the marketing power of promotion. It is that it's power, and it can be power in a really positive, amazing sense. And Nike actually are quite an interesting brand that will empower every person that interacts with their brand as an athlete. So even if you don't buy from Nike, if you want to go on a run, you can join their free runs around the park. They have a real sense of belief in that. But when something is used to commercial gain, it can instill belonging. It can perhaps make fun of something a company's done wrong. So in this case, the Starbucks asking for the name was seen, particularly in the UK, as being a bit too Americanized and not taken as well. So this was why it was made for the British market. But also it can have kind of antagonizing effects. And so in conclusion, we have to be mindful and sympathetic and come from a point of real care when we're dealing with something as fragile, intense and personal as emotions. So thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed today's session. There's tons of research I would love to share, and I get a wee bit lost. I don't know about you guys, when you're teaching something you love, I lose track of time when I go into a zone. So I need something I really need to work on. But I have got my slides I can share with lots and lots of links. I'll email that out to you guys at the break. But thank you for listening.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Everybody's giving applause.
Thank you.
So again, we've got 5-10 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll take a short break. So I don't know if anybody has some initial reflections or questions before I jump in.
Thank you, Claire.
I thought it was both brave and worked really well, flicking between the Padlet and the sharing, because I'm always wary of that, because I feel like, but actually it sort of helped break up the session. So you felt like, you'd finish on the Padlet and then we'd be going to something slightly different. So that was I was very impressed, and also it worked really well as a structure.
Thanks, Steph. That actually is really helpful, because Padlet's something that in the business school is so overused, and I'm trying to find an interesting way of using it and using it to better effect. And I kind of like it to be a tool that's in my pocket, and I may or may not use it. So it's set up in there, but I'm not embarrassed to flick past the slide and say, look, let's just chat rather than bother with the Padlet, or the Padlet's works here. And trying gifts versus words I think this is a nice safe space to experiment in. So thanks for that feedback. That's really helpful.
I agree with Steph. I loved having those breaks, and I thought the use of Padlet was quite interesting, especially with the GIF. But I felt a little bit uncomfortable having to use GIF. It felt like too many steps in order to get. So we had to get our phone, get the GIF. So you had to learn how to use the GIF, and then how to learn how to use the Padlet, and then how to find the GIF. I felt it was pretty fun, and once we got there, but I think it unnerved me a little bit at the start because there were so many steps to it, while the second time when you just had the link to the Padlet, and we could click and then go straight there. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not comfortable with doing so many different steps, but yeah, it unnerved me a little bit. So when we got to the first Padlet, I was like, I don't want, it was almost like a restriction. But that said, I really love how dynamic the session was. And, we had the films, we had a little bit of theory at the start, we had the objects. Maybe I would like to see more of the object itself, seeing a representation of the object, because we're so many steps removed, it was a film of your object on a screen. Again, there were just too many filters. It would have been nice to have seen the shoes, because they're also very cute.
That's so useful, actually. Yeah, I think maybe I was thinking about it when I was watching some of yours, straight away I was thinking I couldn't show scope. They're tiny, they're really little, But I knew that I would be nervous and I would end up having the shaky hands, and I thought I'm just going to hold it and it's going to like fall everywhere. But also I was thinking about the translation of the digital space. I thought I'd experiment with digital and digital. So maybe I need to think about the analog experience within digital space as well, but that's really helpful. And I actually really appreciate what you're saying about Padlet. So my PG students don't like Padlet. We work in a really discursive way. My UG guys, and I teach marketing to year one, love Padlet and love a GIF. And so I'm very much living in that world at the moment with them. And, you know, I'm more than double their age. So it's quite interesting communicating with them. And they found that is a great way to get them to open up and talk, where they struggle with words more. And there was an inclusivity thing with my international students, because they've just, particularly Chinese students who are just starting their language sessions, they've had 5 weeks of language classes, and then they get me for marketing in week 5. So yeah, but that's really interesting feedback, and I'll think about the clunkiness and the steps a bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, Kirsty, I loved it. I thought it was really great. I just loved how playful you made it, as well as I felt like you made me feel as like an audience member very considered, and like very like the experience was just, yeah, very considered, and you made me feel very like almost safe through it, if that makes sense. I think that might just be your presentation style, or just you, but very like being very warm and like supportive through it. And I think for me, I'm, you know, in a content side, I'm a very like nostalgic person. So the content for me was just, it just kind of hit me perfectly. And yeah, I thought it was great. I really like the GIFs as well. And I can understand, I just saw Steph in the chat, like trying to ignore the phone in the sessions. I do the same. I think there's something about the GIF, I don't know, just straight into the camera, something that was kind of, it really kind of captured, I don't know, it really held my attention, I think, through every single part of it, just the points of difference, and the content as well, obviously being incredibly emotional. It just felt very powerful to me. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's just really useful, and plenty of points for reflection. But thanks, Alex. Thanks for being so kind.
No, thank you.
So following on from everybody, I've just got a few points of feedback. Is you were brilliant in terms of like mediating access to digital technologies, also acknowledging the fact that silence is okay, and we don't have to always fill this awkwardness of space within the online or physical space. And I think to give breathing space is really important. One thing which it came through the sessions in the morning as well, which Hunter acknowledged at the beginning of his micro-teaching session, was the importance of introducing the content that will come in case of trigger warnings, and that can be anything from so discreet. So for some, the baby shoes might be enough to be a trigger for some, all the way through to the films and aspects of the 2 different adverts that you showed, and some of the storytelling and thematics around that. So it's, again, which you bring, Kirsty, you really do that kind of sensitivity around the work and around the context that you're discussing, but it's just putting that really as a preface at the beginning to make sure that it is a safe space. And then the other aspect is we must never assume that everybody has a digital device in terms of a mobile phone. Additionally to a laptop, we have to consider digital equity in everything that we do, and make sure that our students feel that they can engage in the session whether they do or don't have those devices, but that also that they can access the platforms or the apps or technologies that we're using. So I know for many we might already do this like prior to, make sure, and kind of that's something we do at the beginning of when we meet a group of students, but it's never to assume that somebody has a mobile phone, because somebody might be accessing the session on that to then jump out of it, so it can create a real complexity. But that's something that's come through this morning as well. But just areas that we really have to think about, because what might be comfortable or easy for us might not be for somebody else.
It's a really challenging one, Rachel. Thank you for your comments. It's super, super useful. I think both of those things I think about a lot. And one of the things I found very difficult when I first started teaching was seeing students come in with tiny little handbags and just a mobile phone. And then after discussion and doing some focus groups and figuring things out, realizing that not everyone was able to bring a laptop, so some couldn't carry one, some couldn't afford one, some were using open access, but most people had a mobile phone. So I was trying to do more led work that would be that. But then I also have to think about other spaces where people maybe have purposely not had a phone, that need distance from it, or don't have one. So yeah, it's a constantly evolving question in my mind about how to manage that. The triggering thing is a really interesting one, and I put it in here purposely so we could have that chat. My subject matter will deal with lots of triggering subjects. It's about marketing, will naturally deal with that. I have anti-consumerist students that want to think about things in a different way, you know, and people that feel triggered by lots and lots of different things. But I'm trying to find a way where I can make the space feel really safe and use things that can be on the edge of comfort, not really upsetting, but on the edge of comfort, to have really valuable discussions. And it's something that I'm not got the answer for yet, but today's feedback was really helpful. And also, I want to say thank you to all of you, because I've had a really horrible 24 hours and I didn't know how I was going to stand here today. So just tough times at work, but